Hello guys, so I am 5 weeks out from my debut to the WBFF stage. So part of this YouTube video, I am going to show you guys a posing session that I'm going to do with my posing coach Kayla, who is a WBFF pro. I'm really excited because we're going to take you through a session and do some Q&As as well that I've got from Instagram. So I have Kayla. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kayla. I'm a WBFF fitness pro. I've competed for the past 6 years with WBFF, and in total 6 times, 2 as an amateur and 4 shows as a pro, both here in Australia and internationally. Been being a posing coach for around 2 years. It's one of the best parts about being in the WBFF is teaching people the ways and how to pose and how to look your best on stage. So I very much enjoy it, and I very much love having Ella as a client. She's like a sponge and it absolutely soaks up everything that I teach her, so yeah.
Thank you. Oh, that's so good. So we're gonna be commencing our Q&As for the WBFF posing and answering all of the questions that you've asked us. So Kayla, the very first question is, how different is the WBFF posing compared to other federations such as your IFBB and ICN?
So it's drastically different, because if you look at WBFF as a whole, it's more of like a modeling type of federation, right? So it's about beauty, it's about fitness, about fashion. So it's not necessarily about bodybuilding as such. Yes, you would classify us as bodybuilders, that's what we're doing, but it's more creative, it's more free-flowing, and it allows for a lot more personality and individualization to go into each individual person, I guess you could say. So no 2 routines should ever be the same, and everything should be tailored towards you and your physique. So yeah, less about the comparison of what you look like and more about how you can showcase your best physique.
That's a really good question. That's a really good answer.
Yeah, thank you. Good question.
I guess that's where the WBFF, the B, is the beauty
It's the beauty, yeah.
And I think people tend to forget that it is also the beauty and the fashion side of things on top of obviously showcasing your physique as well.
Yep.
Amazing. Okay. Is there a difference for the WBFF, is there a difference in posing when it comes to, the different categories, your bikini, wellness, now they've introduced the wellness, fitness and figure?
There is definitely differences between your bikini and wellness and then your fitness and figure, because obviously your fitness and your figure categories are a bit more conditioned and a bit more sized than what a bikini and a wellness athlete would look like. So you want bikini and wellness. The primary difference between the two is wellness, you're bottom heavy, bikini, you're quite balanced. So yes, you can do some very similar poses with the two. So for an example, if you wanted to cross over with categories, I wouldn't really suggest changing too much in your routine. If you're doing wellness, you might want to be doing some more leg emphasis to showcase the lower body a bit more. With the fitness and figure, you do want to probably pop in a few more flexes, show off that muscularity, show off that conditioning. That being said, in bikini and wellness, you can still do that too if you lack, I guess, the muscularity. For an example, when I first competed, I couldn't train upper body too much, so I didn't have much size in my upper body. It would look quite flat, to be honest. So for me, it was okay to sort of pop in a little bit of a flex on your delts and stuff like that, because I knew it wasn't going to be too much for the category I was in, which was bikini at the time. So yeah, definitely you want to sort of flex more in fitness and figure, a little bit less flexing in bikini and wellness. It's more about the beauty side of it and showcasing that balanced physique in your bikini.
So you would say fitness and figure is a little bit more conditioned as opposed to wellness?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to see the criteria in fitness and figure. Well, one of the main criteria is your conditioning over more, what was it say, like, as opposed to like bikini and wellness, a little bit less conditioning. You don't want that hard look. You don't want to see abs or anything in bikini and wellness. That being said, if you have to get lean enough that you can see them, it is what it is. But yeah, definitely more defined, more muscularity in fitness and figure.
And obviously the posing is part of a big thing for all categories as well.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Makes a difference.
That's very good answer. Okay. So obviously the posing gets judged. What would you say in terms of percentage-wise, like the posing gets critiqued, or like the posing plays a big part? Did I say that? As in, like obviously the posing plays a big part. Like what percentage would you say that's contributed to what gets judged overall?
So 20% of your overall score is with your stage presence. So stage presence accompanies your posing as well. So posing and how you present yourself on stage, so to speak. So for an example, you're smiling, your personality on stage is your stage presence. So that's 20% of your overall score. So you could have the best physique on stage, but if you can't showcase that properly, it's gonna let you down. And it is a huge thing that we do look for, especially when people are on par with their physiques, or they may have different physiques, but you're like, top spot, you will drop a spot if your posing isn't up to standard.
So let's just say if your posing so basically you're saying your posing can really bring up
your posing
placing.
can elevate your placing, 100%, yep, absolutely. And it's something like, the first, as a judge, what I look for is when you first come out, am I impressed by you're not necessarily your physique, but am I impressed by you? Can you impress me when you come out onto stage? I want to see you confident, smiling, looking like you want to be there. That's a huge thing, and it makes me want to watch you more. You might not have the greatest physique. I've seen some people that might not have like a top 10 quality physique, for an example, but my God, that posing, like I will keep watching you. Every time. Yeah. Even the same people with the amazing physiques, of course, you still want to watch that because that's so impressive too. But yeah, you want to have everything in there as well, just to really cement your placing on that ladder.
So posing,
yes,
is incredibly important.
It is important.
Thank goodness I have you to help me through my posing. Okay, so I guess for anyone that's looking to compete for the WBFF in the near future, we've talked about the posing. Let's just say if they're beginner and posing is a big part, like how far out should they start practicing or looking for a posing coach to help them with their posing?
I would say start as soon as you can. If your time allows, if your budget allows, if you're able to actually start as soon as possible, definitely. So 20 weeks longer if you plan on competing in WBFF in the future. That doesn't mean to say that you need to go and pay for posing lessons every single week. Absolutely not. I think a huge thing is to definitely do your research on current WBFF competitors, their posing, and even start practicing for some of those poses yourself, because a huge thing about posing is individualization. So we don't want to see people with the same routines on stage. So practice some poses and really get a feel for what suits you, because when you do come to a posing coach to help you with this, you have an idea of what suits you. You don't have to go through that process and those sessions just to try and find those poses that work for you and your physique. It always helps when you feel comfortable in your skin going into these sorts of sessions too. That being said, I've helped many beginners, first-time beginners. Most of them actually probably have been very first-time competitors, and you still achieve the same results, and you help them find who they are in their skin, so to speak, when they first start out. But it's always best to start as soon as it's feasible for you.
So on that note, like, if you don't mind sharing with the audience, like, what was your experience when you first ever started?
Oh my gosh, I was not the greatest poser, let me tell you. I don't know anyone who's the best when you first start out, but for me, I was very fortunate enough to be coached by Alicia Gowans, and she held posing sessions every week for her girls. So we got to do that in a group setting, and the amazing part about that is that you get to bounce ideas off other people. Like, no two bodies in that room were alike. So I could see some poses being done on one girl, I'm like, oh, I really like that, maybe it'll suit me too. And I would either find out if it did or if it didn't, you know, it's just trial and error. And you're learning from other people, learning from your coach as well. So yeah, I was very, very fortunate enough to be able to participate in those types of sessions every week.
Oh, that's good. And I guess I will share a bit of my experience. When I started, I just remembered watching all of the pros online, and I just thought it was so beautiful. And I started to sort of, I guess, copy in a way, just to start off with, and just finding your own groove. And then with the WBFF, they hold weekly, they hold workshops in every state. So I attended one of those. This was a few years ago, and that's where I met Kayla. And I remember seeing her pose, and I was like, "Yep, that's my style. I like that."
I do remember speaking with you that day. Absolutely.
And I was so nervous. And when I reached out to you, I'm like, "Oh my God!" Like, yeah. So. And then when you reached out to me, I'm like, "Oh my God, she actually reached out to me," and it was really nice. And here we are, and
all those years later.
All those years later. So, such a community, and I really, appreciate that they do hold these free workshops, just so that you could get a feel and just see every pro has their own unique style of posing. So I was looking at another pro, and I was like, "Oh, like that's not really me." But then when I saw you, I'm like, yeah, like I could sort of see myself doing that. So when you said the posing's really individualized, like I really, like that's, from my experience, I really feel like that flow, and if it's right for you as well.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
amazing. That's really, really good. Okay. So we've already know that the posing is different for compared to the other federations. This sort of, similar to the last question. So how would you suggest for someone, if they're looking for like a coach, like how to choose the right coach for them?
Yep. Absolutely do your homework. I wouldn't say settle on the one person that you know. So for an example, if you come from a small town, it might be feasible for you to go to that person because they're there. That being said, online is a great way to do things these days as well. So you have access to more people if you do things online. Yes, it is slightly different, but that also does depend on the coach. So some people coach online really well, others may not. It may not be just easy for them to do it. Choose somebody, and I cannot stress this enough, choose somebody with experience in the WBFF, not just posing in general. You want somebody who knows what the federation are looking for. You want somebody who has done these moves themselves. Not every pro or every amateur is great at posing. And that's why we have our own coaches too, right? Because we also like to learn things. Some of the top pros in the federation still have posing coaches, even though they coach people themselves. So it's always good to learn from other people. What else is important when choosing a pose? What did I write? Maybe I should look. I think that might have just been it. You want somebody as well who can choreograph a routine to your physique, because like I've mentioned probably countless times already, no two physiques are the same. So it can be obvious sometimes, like from a judging perspective, I have noticed some girls have the same routine as others on stage, and that sometimes usually attributes to the fact they have the same posing coach. It doesn't happen often, but just something to keep in mind. Make sure that you have a coach that is showing you poses and teaching you things that are to your physique, not somebody else's and not their own. It's great to take inspiration from other people. I've taken inspiration from people like Georgia Pashina, Hattie Boydell, Alicia Gowan, Stephanie Ayala, like all of these ladies, but to what my physique looks like and to what I need for me, not to what their physique is. So yeah, you definitely want somebody who can look at you, throw in some poses for you, and then be like, maybe that one doesn't suit you, maybe that's not your style. I do have girls coming to me saying, oh, I really just want to pose like really sexy and sassy, and it's like, that's cool, but it may not suit you, just so you know. You might be more of the really beautiful, flowing kind of person, whereas some people can be like really dark and mysterious, so to speak. So don't ever be upset or anything if someone tells you it just doesn't suit you, because if you try and do that on stage, it's obvious when something doesn't suit your physique. So you want to make it look like you're comfortable in your own skin and you're doing everything to showcase you as a person, not somebody else.
Beautifully answered.
Thank you.
And I suppose that's what I love about the federation. It's, there's no rigidity. It's really, wow, the confidence and what you feel comfortable in your own skin is what you show on stage. So yeah, that's beautifully
individuality.
All right, so the next question is, because the federation's different from IFBB and ICN, the new transitions, we don't want it to be similar to the IFBB.
Yes.
So how do we avoid those sort of fixed poses?
Yeah, this is a big one, because I've noticed it happening more and more over the past few years, where people are being a little bit more rigid in their transitions than some others. So it's not everybody, but it is starting to be a little bit of a common trend. And maybe that could just be the fact that someone's being coached by somebody from another federation. It could be the fact that that's the type of people that they follow on social media. So you tend to mimic those aspects of these people's physiques, which is entirely natural, right? Like it just happens. So I would say, like, just practice flowing through things. Don't actually set your heart on certain poses. When you're transitioning, you really kind of want to move with the pose. And I think this is super important to remember and to practice while you're doing it too, because we don't want any more than 2 to 3 poses in your T-walk on each spot, because it slows down the actual show itself. You have so much time in your comparisons to actually have these sorts of fixed poses, so to speak. Your comparison round is exactly what that's for. So in your T-walk, your transitions sort of want to be free-flowing. You kind of want to get on, do your 2 to 3 poses, and then move along. You will have ample time after that to really showcase your glutes or your side pop or something, like whatever it is that you're so proud of working hard for. So yeah, you just want to keep flowing through movements. Yes, absolutely practice those certain poses to start with, just so you get a feel for what that pose is supposed to feel like and how you can transition in and out of it. But yeah, it's the flowing. Try and get a real good feel for flowing. I feel personally, for me, it's quite easy. I come from a dancing background. I did it for 8 years. So for me, and for people like the beautiful Tani Sheehan, right? Full dancing background. She knows how to move. So some people it comes a lot more naturally than others, but practice, practice, practice. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think when people see now bodybuilding is becoming more and more popular, IFBB and the WBFF, and often people get confused that the two federations are completely different.
Yeah.
So they look at the IFBB transition and they try to mimic that.
Yep.
And they think that because WBFF is also a bodybuilding competition as well. So I think that's where the confusion comes from. But what you've said, it's really about the flow, and people should really understand that it's so different than the IFBB, and it shouldn't be looked as other federations. So
I think it's important as well. Like, I know that some girls will cross over between WBF and IFBB just to find out where their physique sits, and that's completely normal. Not everyone's going to have a physique for the WBFF and vice versa. So to do a show with either federation is quite common, but I think it's so super important that you choose posing coaches based on each federation to choreograph a routine to those individual federations, and you really need to practice. Like, for an example, you do your IFBB show, your next week or two, or however long it is until WBFF, you really need to knuckle down on those poses, because it is completely different and it will show on stage if you haven't practiced, because all you're going to be doing is very rigid type of posing towards, it's not really rigid, they are very, very flowy as well, but they're very fixed poses, so it can appear a little bit rigid, and as opposed to WBFF.
beautifully answered. No, that's really good, because people often get confused, but WBFF, as what we've got out, is just really practice on the flow and individual
movements. Yes.
Okay, so a couple more questions. And I I feel like you're really going to go big on this one because we talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
So a question that we had was, what is your no-goes? Like, what is to absolutely avoid when it comes to posing, like your no-goes?
Well, I don't just want to preface this and say I'm not trying to be mean at all, but there are certain things that, from a judging perspective, you see it and you're like, oh, maybe not. So I think actually Pauline may have touched on a few of these in the recent workshops that have been held across Australia in preparation for this show. So one thing is like arm windmills. So I think there was not those ones,
oh, no.
These ones.
Oh, these ones.
These
okay.
ones. It's a very IFBB move. Looks great in IFBB, but not WBFF. So when you're transitioning out of a pose, it does happen. I wouldn't say too much, which is good, but it probably happens obviously enough for it to be mentioned. But yeah, you want to avoid the whole arm windmill thing. There are definitely other ways to move your arms around. You could do ups and downs and arounds and all that kind of stuff, but just no arm windmills. Too much armpit. I get a lot of questions as to why too much armpit. To be honest, do you really want to be looking at someone's armpit?
No.
Not when you've got tan, you've been sweating, like just no. Don't get me wrong, there are some beautiful poses where you've got your arms up and all that kind of stuff. Just make sure it's like we talked about before, like a flowing move. You kind of want to hide, only for a couple of seconds. You don't want to be sitting there with your armpits up like this or too much armpit like that. If you've seen it on stage, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's just all sorts of interesting, let's say that. It doesn't happen too much anymore, which is great to see, but people bending over too far. We have to look at it from a perspective of where the judges sit. So we're not sitting face on, we're down and we're looking straight up. So we don't need you bending over too much. I find what it seems like is that some girls will tend to bend over because they're trying to show that glute hamstring tie-in, which is great. We all love a glute hamstring tie-in, but if you're in a bikini category, it's not necessary. We don't need to be seeing it. So you don't need to bend over. A segue into that one is bending your knees too much in that same pose. So relax your legs, you want them nice, not rigidly straight, just nice and straight. You don't want to be bending them over to pop, to show off that glute area. Lat spreading in the fitness and figure divisions. That doesn't happen too often either, but I have noticed a few people doing it. It mostly happens with the power poses, like the Superman pose. People are spreading their lats. We're not like figure in the IFBB, we don't need to see that. Your lats look great, I'm sure, but there's ample opportunity to showcase that and a different kind of back shot in your comparison rounds as opposed to standing there and seeing the lats. It's not very, for lack of better words, I guess you should say maybe feminine to be showing that in a beauty kind of federation. Hopefully no one comes for me for that one, don't at me. But yeah, try to avoid the lat spreads from the back and the front. What else did I have? Bending over too far from the side. So the same concept as bending over too far from the back. Some people bend way too far over to, again, show off the glutes. If you have that back mobility, it should come naturally without you essentially bending over too far. You should be able to keep the body upright and pop your glutes out. In that case, if you're trying to show off glutes that you don't have, do a different pose and hide that, because that's a big thing and a bonus about WBFF is you can hide weaknesses in your posing, and I strongly encourage it. Because obviously you're judged on the best version of you. If you're lacking something, you didn't have a chance to build that up before you competed or before you started prepping, it's fine to hide it. Doesn't make you any less of an athlete for doing it. It just means that it's something that you need to work on, but the rest of you still looks great, you know what I mean? And there's two more. No, there's three more, sorry. Arm swinging too much while you're walking is another one. So you want to avoid too much, like you don't want to look like you're kind of running down the stage. Too much touching. Too much of like too much touching. Like it's okay to like get all sexy and feely, but just sometimes there can be a little too much. And the last one is dangerous poses. The flamingo pose has been happening a few times here and overseas. Basically, it's where you're on one leg. So sometimes you can actually manage to pop your leg up in a pose and then move on. Like, that's cool. I've seen it done plenty of times. But then there has been instances where people will stand on one leg for far too long. And the reason why it's classified, to me personally, as a dangerous pose is that one, you can hurt yourself if you're nervous on stage and your foot isn't stable in those massive heels, for an example. You could injure yourself and potentially fall off stage depending on where you are. The second thing is people watching it try and mimicking that pose, and they're not as confident as you in doing it. They haven't practiced enough, and then they hurt themselves on stage, and we don't want that. So try to avoid things that seem uncomfortable, or think in the head, like ahead of time, and think, will I be nervous on stage? Maybe. Is this going to do me of service on the day? If I fall over, probably not. So try to avoid things like that.
That's on one leg.
On one leg. Look, don't get me wrong, some girls are like absolutely nailed it, but the scary thing for me is other girls looking at it and be like, oh, that looks so cool, I want to do that. Not everyone's going to be as good as that.
Yeah, so safety as well.
Safety first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always, especially in the heels that we wear, safety first.
Amazing. Yes. Okay. Last question, because that's, otherwise we're going to be here all day. I know we've touched, the question is what the judges are looking for when it comes to posing, and we've already discussed individuality and the confidence part. Was there, just to wrap this question up, like, was there any final tips that you wanted to add in with this question?
Just practice everything that you get taught from your posing coach. Honestly, practice is very underrated. Like, you go to the gym 5, 6, hopefully not 7 days a week while you're in prep, because that's very strenuous. But like however many days a week you go to the gym to train to look your best. Why are you not doing that for posing? So practice, even if it's just for 15 minutes after every session, or maybe it's an hour once a week, or something like, even while you're in the shower. I do that. I will be in the shower, I'm like, oh, wait, like, I could do, like, it's just a little moment to yourself, and you're like, I could do, like, my shower's not that big, so I don't really get much room, but, anywhere you possibly can. It doesn't, you don't have to have your heels available. It can be in bare feet, it could be at work, it could be on the treadmill while you're getting your steps in. I sometimes look like an absolute idiot when I'm walking, like, one foot in front of the other, just trying to practice my walk, when most people are walking just like normally,
I do that in my steps sometimes. I'm trying to think of it. And
any opportunity, like I said, you don't have to be wearing your heels, you don't have to be in an ideal environment or anything like that. You just need to get some sort of practice in. And confidence, like, we've always talked about confidence. If you don't have that confidence on stage, fake it. A smile goes a long way. And just remember that the judges know what nervousness looks like. We've all been there, we've all done it, we've seen it plenty of times too. It's fine to look nervous. You're not ever going to be marked down for looking nervous. Like, we know, we're like, oh, she's so nervous. Like, how do we, like, we always smile at the competitors and stuff to try and make them feel a little bit more at ease. We get it. It can be a very nerve-wracking experience. So try and put on a smile as soon as you walk out, just to try and feel that confidence if you're feeling really nervous.
I'm absorbing all of this because
and practice your smiling while you're posing. People don't do that enough. It seems weird smiling at yourself in a room, even if you're by yourself. Yeah. But you do need to do it, because on the day, I've been told so many times, Kayla, you don't look like you're smiling. But I'm like, in my head, I think I am. I'm just not. But in my head, I'm like, but I was. Felt like I looked amazing, But I look like probably about to kill someone, so.
This has been incredibly helpful, and especially I'm absorbing everything because it's going to be my first time, and I'm definitely feeling the nerves right now being at 5 weeks out. So thank you for all of these tips. And if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to follow Kayla on Instagram. We'll have her handle up there, because she is honestly amazing, and I cannot speak more highly of you for helping me through my posing and everything the last couple of years. So I'm excited. So any questions, please hit Kayla up, and thank you folks.
Thank you. So Ella's going to be doing her full routine now. So at the end of each point of her T-walk, she's going to be doing her 2 to 3 poses. in the same sort of flowy movements that we talked about earlier in the transitioning. So she's going to be making sure her transitions into each of her 2 to 3 poses are going to be really nice and flowing and natural and beautiful, and they sort of count as like mini poses at the same time.